Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Again, still on vacation. Sorry I missed the upload yesterday, but it is what it is. We are back again today, and I want to talk about an interesting topic that I feel like has kind of taken the investing and just the general collector, Pokemon space for a loop, right? It feels truly like we are never going to get MSRP again. There's lots of people in the hobby right now kind of just saying, there's just no chance that we see MSRP until 2026 or 2027. They're thinking that the mega hype is going to continue. They're thinking that the 30th anniversary is going to give even more wind to the sales of the TCG market. And on a glance, on a surface glance, it really feels like that. It's super hard to find product. Every single new drop is getting scalped out the wazoo. And so I totally understand how there's this kind of like fear of missing out just looming above the hobby and kind of making feel like there's no possible way that any of these sets can dip to $200 or even MSRP. And recently I saw a lot of people in my comment section talking and asking me like, hey, do you think Destined Rivals will reach 200, 210 at some point, or even MSRP? Will I even be able to get into Destined Rivals as a product? Because the thinking goes, right, is that the cheapest sets from Scarlet and Violet era are now $200. And this is a little unprecedented for an era to still be going on. Yeah, we're kind of at the tail end of the era, but like the era is still going on, right? And for all of the booster boxes to be above MSRP, that's pretty. Even Sword and Shield, we were kind of close to that, but Silver Tempest you could find out of the Pokemon Center for a decent amount of time. You could find Astral Radiance and Brilliant Stars ETBs on the Pokemon Center. Those are for MSRP, right? So it was still possible. There was still stuff you could buy, but now it is like everything is sold out. We are clearly in a very different time and different market from back then, and this is the new biggest high that Pokemon has kind of reached in terms of the TCG. They're printing more cards than they ever have before, and there is more demand than there ever has been before. It's a huge combination of things like Pocket, Prismatic Evolutions, just general hype towards TCGs in general, people not wanting to put their money into traditional cash or other assets because they're seeing how quickly Pokemon can grow, and also a mix of scalpers and people feeling that they can make a quick buck off of Pokemon. And so all of those factors are kind of swirling around to make the current market that we have right now. And look, it's impossible for one person like me who just casually is putting money into the hobby to like 100% definitively tell you that one thing or another thing is going to happen. Like, I want to make this very clear. I have no idea what's going to happen. We are in very unprecedented times. However, in my opinion, I have a lot of faith in the Pokemon Company to normalize things. What does that mean? I think right now Pokemon is actually losing a lot of potential profits. And what I'm trying to say is that these kind of secondary pricing, like Destined Rivals reaching $300 a box, is actually not good for the Pokemon Company. There's no benefit they gain other than everything being sold out immediately, which is good for sure, but it also means that they're not seeing any of this demand into their own pockets. This demand for Destined Rivals, right? If they had printed enough boxes where everyone who actually wanted one could buy one, then they would have made it way more money. And so I think Pokemon is seeing what's happening, and so they are making an attempt soon, hopefully, to print as much as they can for upcoming sets and sets that were like most recently released. Obviously Prismatic comes to mind. We've seen the PC ETBs been reprinted more than most other PC ETBs, so clearly like they can tell which sets are the hottest, so they're going to keep reprinting those. Destined Rivals, I have a feeling we might even get another PC ETB drop, or just a huge wave of new reprints for the booster boxes and other products and ancillary products, right? It feels like they're moving towards premium collection boxes and like the collection boxes with, I don't know, the Massive Ogerpon I think came out recently. There's like a Salamence Reshiram box. It has all these like different kind of packs in them. So maybe they're going that route for getting more packs out there, but it does feel like Pokemon can't keep up with current demand right now, but I just don't see that being the case for a whole other year. It's already been a year, almost. We're reaching the year mark in a few months here, and I think at that point, like, it is kind of crazy that it has already lasted like so long. But I think what this means is that we've kind of reached a new floor of demand, and Pokemon is probably realizing that, and so they're going to match that floor of demand at some point. Is it going to be Destined Rivals? Is Destined Rivals going to be the set where that happens? I don't know. I think it very well could be. I think Surging Sparks even could be that point. But the bigger point that a lot of people are making is, well, if older SV sets like Paradox Rift, SV Base are $200 a box, then how could Destined Rivals ever reach MSRP? How could it ever reach $200 a box? Because those are just worse sets. And it seems like a very reasonable argument to make, given the market conditions that we have right now. However, I do want to say that's not the only factor that goes into pricing of, a collectible item like this. Supply is very, very important. Yes, demand is huge. Yes, demand matters, but supply is also part of that equation. And just kind of forgetting about it is you're doing yourself a disservice, right? So obviously right now there is just not enough supply to keep up with the current demand. I mean, the price has been absolutely skyrocketing. Now, look, I was lucky to get a case of this for $1,400, and I actually traded in some slabs towards that I recently graded. So my cost basis for my Destined Rivals case is actually just under $1,000, which I was very happy with to secure my position in. I think that's as good of a price as I'm probably going to get for a modern set in this current market. So I'm just kind of sitting on that case. And for those of you guys who don't have any boxes of Destined Rivals, I understand the FOMO. It does feel like we're never going to be able to get this, and it's going to be super hard, right? But my advice would be to hold out. Why am I saying this? Well, let's take a look at two of my favorite sets from the SV era, both very strong sets, right? Paldean Fates. We can see the ETBs are doing absolutely insane numbers. Pokemon Center ETB, $280. Normal ETB, $205. I actually think these are a little undervalued still, but again, very, very insane numbers. These were printed a lot. If you remember, if you were in the hobby back then, these were in vending machines all the time. I remember picking up a lot of these. I opened a lot of these because I like ripping Paldean Fates. It's a fun set to open. And so I wish I'd kept some of them sealed. I'm not gonna lie, I only have a few now, but these ETBs have done amazingly, right? However, how is this ETB 2 times the price of a prismatic ETB when the total set value is nowhere near it? Right? The total set value for Prismatic is $4,000. 4 times almost, maybe less than 4 times, maybe 3 times the price, right? Prismatic should be, quote unquote, the better product, yet the ETB is only $100. Now, look, it's kind of obvious. Like, we don't really need to discuss it, but I have to make this point that supply matters. Prismatic is obviously much newer. It's getting tons of reprints. Yes, the price is going to be held down because of those factors. And Prismatic, by all accounts, is a worse set than Paldean Fates. Now, don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying Paldean Fates is bad. In fact, Paldean Fates, I think I ranked it as my favorite set of the SV era, just because I think it has some of the best chase cards. I love the pulling experience. It's very fun. But, like, let's be honest, guys. It just doesn't really hold a candle to the sheer depth that Prismatic has. And I think over time, Prismatic is going to do better than Paldean Fates. But again, that doesn't matter because the current price is only indicative of the current supply and the current demand. Now, you might tell me that, hey, demand for Prismatic is lower than demand for Paldean Fates. Maybe you're right. Personally, I think it has more to do with supply. I think if there wasn't so much supply of Prismatic on the market, especially the ETBs, they would be doing way crazier numbers. And you can actually see this because if you look at the booster bundles, they're $65. Meanwhile, the Paldean Fates booster bundles, let's see if we can find one, are $65. So the Paldean Fates and the Prismatic actually have the exact same booster bundle price. However, Prismatic bundles were printed way less than ETBs so far. I have seen less Prismatic bundles than I have seen the ETBs, especially compared to Paldean Fates, right? And so I think, like, again, supply is a very important part of this equation, and I could definitely see a world where Destined Rivals goes down to $200. How can I see this happening? Well, let's lay out the groundwork for this, right? So Destined Rivals gets more reprints, in the next few months. That's pretty obvious. I think we're all expecting that to happen. Maybe it doesn't come down all the way down to 200. Maybe it comes down to 250, 220, something like that. But then we enter the mega era, right? New mega sets come out. Those are super hot. Everyone loves them. Then they reprint Destined Rivals again. That could definitely happen. And then are people going to want to buy the new set? Or are they going to buy some older sets, right? And this is probably going to happen for Journey Together, for Prismatic, maybe Surging, maybe Twilight, maybe even Temporal, because as we mentioned, those are the H regulation sets, right? The G block is moving out of rotation soon, so those have a lesser chance of getting reprinted, but also we could still see 151, etc. But I think there's definitely a world where demand for this specific set falls off, and then the supply keeps increasing. And so, it's just a natural market force that would move this price back down. So, look, if you got in at 240, I think you're fine. I think you can keep holding. Personally, again, I was not advocating to buy this at 240. I still think that's actually kind of a high price to pay in my head. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe, it's actually not going to come back down to 240 ever. But I don't know. I just can't see that happening. And, a box that I think really represents that well is Surging Sparks. I mean, look, there were plenty of opportunities to buy this at 217, 219. Obviously, at pre-release, it came out below MSRP, but quickly rose above that, and people were thinking, "Wow, Surging Sparks never gonna be cheap again." Well, we got reprint, bam, reprint, bam, and if we see more reprints, could see it come down even more. Now, again, will it reach MSRP? That's a pretty bold prediction. That I don't know. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't know if any SV box is going to go down to MSRP again. Personally, in my personal opinion, I think Journey Together will. I think Surging Sparks might. And I think Prismatic actually might, because they seem really intent on reprinting Prismatic. Now, in terms of Prismatic, I don't know if the ETBs specifically will go down to MSRP, because they tend not to like reprinting, the ETBs as much. But I could see the bundles definitely going down. And maybe if they reprint, sticker collect, I don't know, if they reprint some of the more ancillary products and we see them more available, I could see that happening for maybe a brief moment, but a moment nonetheless. Now, ultimately, if you buy in at 240, if you buy in at 300, you're probably going to be fine for the long term. Your money is just not going to be working for you. But look, if we're looking at a 5-year time frame, it technically doesn't necessarily matter. If you're going to hold for that long, now given that is a very long period of time, so you have to kind of know that you're committed to that. But if you're talking 5 years, look, this box is probably going to be at least 1,000, maybe 800, minimum in 5 years time. I could see it being well above that, right? If you look at the boxes that were available 5 years ago and compare them to now, a lot of them have done pretty well. And Destined Rivals is clearly the best main set of this era, so I have no doubt it's going to do very well in the future. But again, looking at Surging Sparks, it's at 240 right now, and Temporal Force is only $10 less, right? Does that mean that Temporal Forces and Surging Sparks are almost the same in terms of value? No, I think Surging Sparks is very clearly the better set. It has better chase cards. It is more popular of a set and is probably going to do much better in long term. But Temporal Forces is this expensive because there's just not much supply that's re-entering the market. We got Temporal Forces restock a few months ago, but that it got eaten up and now there's not much supply anymore, so it's just driving the price up. So supply is a huge factor in these equations, and people have to stop comparing the past sets with less supply to the current sets with more supply and saying, oh well, if those past sets are at this price, well, the future sets are never going to get down to those prices. That's just not how that works. It's like if we're comparing Sword and Shield base. Sword and Shield base is a way worse set than Surging Sparks, but it's also out of print, right? There's just no use in comparing it. So, that's a more extreme example, but again, supply is a very, very important part of this equation, and you might push back and say, hey, there's just too much demand. It's eating through all the current supply that gets dropped. So no matter how much supply Pokemon gives, it doesn't matter, because if it ever reaches a certain downturn point, everyone, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to buy as much as I can. The thing is, though, people are still buying at these prices. And I'm sure some people are holding on to them. And so if they see the price drop a shit ton, are they actually going to have the conviction to buy more, or are they going to panic sell, right? And look, it happens more often than you think because, I've been investing in the stock market for a while. And when I first started, I would invest into singular stocks I believed in. And if I ever saw them go down, I would panic sell, right? And that was just me not understanding how markets work. That was just me panicking, thinking, oh my God, I messed up. I got to move my money and I got to move it into a better place. In the reality, if you just held the majority of the times, you would be up. It just doesn't matter. As long as you leave the money there and you don't touch it, you'll be fine. So ultimately, I think you'll have better times to buy into it, but we could also see panic sell-offs happen if a bunch more supply reaches the market. Look, there's a ton of different things that could happen that could drive the price down. I think kind of ruling out the possibility that Destin goes down, I don't know. It seems a little presumptuous, right? You're really like you're downplaying the Pokemon Company's ability to print to demand, which historically has been a bad idea. Evolutions, Shining Fates, Vivid Voltage, like historically Pokemon has been able to print to demand and then overprint to that even. Now, maybe they learned their lesson, maybe they don't want to crash their market, quote unquote, or whatever, and they want to keep that steady balance. But I do believe we'll get a lot more reprints, and I don't know, we'll see what happens. Personally, I wouldn't be buying Destined at 300. I think that's way too steep a price. I do think we're going to get more reprints. I think it's going to come down to 200, in my humble opinion. But again, not financial advice. I have no idea what's going to happen. And look, if you bought in at these high prices, you'll be fine, okay? Don't panic sell. The best thing to do is to hold on, okay? That's the best thing to do in any market. If you haven't bought any Destined Rivals yet, don't FOMO. Just chill. Just wait and see what happens. Wait for more reprints to come. In my opinion, if you don't know how to navigate the market, I would say wait for new supply to drop, buy a box or two, and then wait for the next restock to happen. That way you can keep kind of dollar cost or averaging when the supply is highest and so the price is at its lowest. Ideally, right? That's when you want to be dollar cost averaging. But in general, if you just dollar cost average every month as well, you'll probably be fine anyway. And as always, obviously only use money that you don't need tomorrow, right? Don't put it on credit cards that you can't pay off or whatever. But that's kind of obvious advice. But anyway, what do you guys think will happen with Destined Rivals booster boxes? I think the hype is a little overblown right now. I think people need to calm down with paying these kind of prices for it. I just don't think it is even close to sets like Astral Radiance and Silver Tempest. Like, it's starting to reach those numbers, right? And it's not even close in age. It just doesn't make sense to me that it's already at 300. But hey, the market will market, I guess. We'll see what happens. But yeah, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.